out. Hello, everyone. My name is Cameron Cowan. This is the Cameron Journal Podcast. Oh, my throat is already dry. That's not a good sign. Welcome, everyone, to the Cameron Journal News Hour. I am so glad you're here. I appreciate you. I want to remind everyone to sign up for the Cameron Journal newsletter. That has all the best exciting information. Let's get some light on this subject. All the best and exciting information for you. This week we discussed all sorts of things, including the big problem with the Somalis in Minnesota and all the online trolling. I have that story. We'll see if we get to it. There's some bigger fish to fry. But there's two ways to sign up. You can go to CameronJournal.com/newsletter and sign up there, or you can go to CameronJournal.substack.com and sign up there as well, particularly if you're already on Substack and don't want to sign up for another thing. CameronJournal.substack.com. Use your Substack account, sign in. You can subscribe. You can do free all the way up to a pledge. And we love that. Speaking of pledges, big shout out to all of our Cameron Journal Plus subscribers. We thank you and appreciate you for supporting this journalism. And if you want to support this journalism, please make sure to become a Cameron Journal Plus subscriber or pledge on Substack. I really, really appreciate it. If you can't afford to do all that, not a problem. Please make sure to like and subscribe and share on whatever platform you're watching this on. A lot of people watch from Twitter. Give me a follow. If you're on YouTube, like and subscribe. If you're on Twitch, give me a like as well. We really, really, really appreciate it. It helps us grow. So, and obviously you can always follow me on all my social channels, which are easily found at the top of CameronJournal.com, or just look for @CameronCowan on most platforms. The only one that's different is @CameronJournal on TikTok. So that's all fun and well. Thank you all so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it. We're going to dive right into the headlines, and they are so entertaining this week. So let me get rid of these boxes that I use for extra people when the guys are here from The Living Joke. Don't forget to stop by and listen to The Living Joke on Wednesday. If you're watching this right now, you're on the right place. You can watch The Living Joke there too. So make sure to come Wednesdays at 4. And make sure to like and subscribe us on Instagram and TikTok, TLJ_joke. And you can find long form on every podcast channel you can think of. Just look up The Living Joke, or make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you do notifications, we'll let you know when we go live. Now, let's talk about... This is going to be the start of a couple stories I have here. So, Caleb Hammer is the Gen Z Dave Ramsey. So let's take a look at this first. He does this whole He is. He does this whole financial podcast sort of thing. He's very popular, top 10 in the world. And so as we see here, 84-month car loan. He's the new Dave Ramsey. And what's really funny is like I just have kind of found out about him. It looks like he's a little bit new. He's still, kind of getting up to the top and everything. Um and and someone's like, oh, Caleb Hammer's getting kind of insufferable on Twitter. Can see him being Fuentes 2.0 in 5 to 6 years. Hope it doesn't go that way. And he's over here being like, violent crime is bad. I want housing to be affordable and to have a strong, growing economy. It's like, yeah, but here's the thing. He says it kind of like the older Dave Ramsey in the worst, most insufferable way possible. I agree with him. Violent crime is bad. Housing should be affordable, and we should have a strong and growing economy. But as is so often the case with these guys, things tend to be rather exclusionary. Um, and even in the original tweet, here, he's trying to say that he's becoming Nick Fuentes, which is a little bit difficult. Nick Fuentes is blatantly racist, sort of thing, in a way that Caleb Hammer, I don't think, probably has been. And so it's, and this person could just have an axe to grind, but I was just kind of using this as a platform to kind of introduce us all to Caleb Hammer, because my guess is, given his takes on finances and the economy and the social stuff and all this type of thing, we'll be hearing a lot more from this man in the nearby future. Because he's number one in finance and top viewed listen podcast. We're going to be hearing more about him, okay? Because he's getting to that type of level. He is enjoying that type of online attention. How many followers does he have? Yeah, 119,000 followers on Twitter. Yeah, like, we're going to be hearing much more from this man, and I think he also represents a certain a certain center right politic that's very popular among young people, that are kind of like, yeah, let's clean things up and have no crime. I do want cheap housing. I want to have a strong growing economy, although one can argue cheap housing and a strong growing economy are kind of antithetical to each other outside of existential circumstances. But we're going to be hearing a lot more from this man. However, this whole idea of things have to change for young people quickly and in a hurry is something that is definitely starting to be a bit of a theme, which is, I'm putting my phone on do not disturb, because if I don't, we'll get interrupted. um it's becoming a bigger growing theme, and the calls for doing stuff specifically for young people are growing ever louder. And I love this discussion because it dovetails quite neatly into some of the concepts I struggled with at the end of my book, America's Lost Generation, which is right here. America's Lost Generation. If you've not gotten a copy, you can get it at CameronJournal.com. Just click on Shop Cameron's Books. Um, and and that gets into our second story, which is actually something I talked about on the newsletter, about things being temporary. And I wrote in the newsletter that feeling of precariousness, and I even talk about it in the book, America's Lost Generation, available at CameronJournal.com. I even talk about in the book that feeling of temporary, that feeling of precariousness, is something that is really destabilizing for people. It says here, why are young people so miserable? The overwhelming feeling of impermanence. They can't get a job in the city they want, so they temporarily live elsewhere. They can't live in the neighborhood they want, so they settle somewhere they don't want. They can't work in the field they want, so they settle for a job for now until they can do what they really want. Years go by, and these temporary compromises don't feel permanent. So they either accept that what they want is forever out of reach, or convince themselves it's all temporary. And um and I love the first comment. It says, and to add insult to injury, we're told that we have it better than our parents did. I'm somewhat fortunate, but I see the plight with my friends. And this is exactly true. And all the people, one of the things that's unique about my book, America's Lost Generation, about millennials, is I actually took the time to go interview the correct people, um, you know, and talk to different millennials in different situations. And I tell people, I even included the plumber who wrote in and said, love the comment for your book, but I'm doing great. Like, my life is fine, but I love the vibe and love what you're doing. I just wanted to give you another perspective. And I put it in the book. I also put in the family who's doing very well. They own a house, picket fence, 2 kids. And they said, yeah, we're one major health crisis from losing everything. And there's this sense and this feeling of precariousness that did not necessarily exist before for everybody, but certainly seems to be incredibly common now. And the people who have a secure position are growing ever less, ever smaller. And this feeling of temporary is a constant thing. You can't get the job, so you temporarily live elsewhere because you might get the job but can't get the city. Can't live in the neighborhood, so you settle somewhere else. You can't work in that field, so you settle for this job over here. As the years go by, it doesn't feel temporary anymore. It feels like a permanent situation, and it's just like, you don't get anything you want. You don't get it's like, it's okay if you have a great job but in a bad city, or you live in a great neighborhood or a great city but the job's not so great, or you work in a great city but you're in the wrong, like, whereas today you don't get anything. You can't afford housing. You can't sometimes afford the job that you want. It's not, everyone's kind of like, well, just live elsewhere, just all this sort of thing. It's like, that's all fine, but it's everywhere in your life. Everywhere. You know, and it leads to a feeling of helplessness, of powerlessness. And I think for a lot of people today, especially politically, I think they're starting to look around and wonder, well, who are we all doing this for? If we can't get anything we want, we can't get a decent job anywhere near anywhere you want to live. You can't get sometimes you find out, oh, your field doesn't exist anymore. It's been closed. There's no jobs. You didn't network enough, didn't come from the right background, all this type of thing. And all of a sudden you're looking around to be kind of like, well, what's the point? Why are we doing any of this? And I was writing about this in the newsletter, and then it ironically gets into this story where you have the restarting of the 3 Mile Island nuclear plant. And it says here, Trump and Microsoft want to reboot the 3 Mile Island nuclear plant. Locals in their 30s are excited about the jobs it will bring in, but baby boomer retirees are mobilizing to stop it. It says here, the divide is partly generational, pitting some of those personally scarred by the troubled nuclear past against a younger population eager to embrace zero carbon energy and technological advancement. And the first comment is quite apt. The worst nuclear disaster in U.S. history had no fatalities and no injuries. This is Wall Street Journal. I don't know if we'll be able to read this. It might be paywalled. It is. But you know what we can do? We can take this and we can go down to the news app where I have a subscription and pop it in. Bingo. And it says here, Middletown, Pennsylvania, 46 years have passed since America's worst nuclear accident at 3 Mile Island jolted the country and created skepticism of nuclear energy. Now, a plan to reboot the plant to help power Microsoft data centers has reignited resistance among some residents who believe they already know the answer to the question, what could go wrong? For them to reopen, it's devastating, said Beth Drosba, 77, who vividly recalls fleeing her home with her children during the 1979 crisis. A second reactor at the plant that was undamaged in the accident did run again, but proved too costly and closed in 2019. That is the reactor being revived, worrying opponents like Drosba, who thought that an era was over. Yet a palpable, optimistic counter-narrative runs through this blue-collar town. Another contingent anticipates jobs. Some 500 have already returned on site, a revitalized downtown, and a new period of opportunity. They view the accident's lingering impact as minimal, if they consider it at all. The divide is partly generational, pitting some of those personally scarred by a troubled nuclear past against a younger population eager to embrace zero carbon energy and technological advancement. Jen Lyons, 33, stands firmly on the side of the future. Her hillside home looks over the Susquehanna River and offers a clear view of the plant's signature cooling towers above bare trees. Safety concerns don't trouble her. Lyons, a registered nurse, knows that her father works at a different nuclear plant, and her young son even has a Lego model of it. When people say, "Where do you live?" I say, TMI is in my backyard. I wish they wouldn't have closed it to begin with. Championing a nuclear power renaissance, the Trump administration recently announced a $1 billion federal loan to Constellation Energy to restart the reactor. Constellation rebranded the site as Crane Clean Energy Center. Microsoft agreed to purchase electricity from the rebooted reactor for the next 20 years. The reopening marks a significant moment in the mini boom that the artificial intelligence sector is driving across Pennsylvania, Michigan, Iowa, and Illinois. Major tech companies, including Microsoft and Amazon.com, are hauling nuclear reactors back to life at their energy hungry data centers. In Middletown, businessman Justin Hoek, 37, said Constellation, which plans to restart the reactor in 2027, had already contacted him. They asked him about hosting happy hours for the company at the brewery and distillery he's opening downtown, which is now decorated with fall banners and hay bales. I think it'd be good for us, Hoke said, while hauling 55 pounds of malt. I don't get upset about all the hypotheticals. Middletown, a quiet borough of about 9,500 people, sits on the Susquehanna River, roughly 10 miles southeast of Harrisburg, the Pennsylvania capital. Though locally celebrated for its proximity to a scenic railroad and the Hershey Chocolate Empire, the town's identity was redefined in March of 1979. It was then that Middletown burst onto television screens worldwide and became synonymous with 3 Mile Island. The accident stemmed from an equipment failure and compounding human missteps. A valve designed to drain water from the plant's fuel rod stuck open, yet operators mistakenly shut down water pumps, causing a partial meltdown. The reactor sent some radiation into the air over central Pennsylvania. 3 days later, the governor advised pregnant women and preschoolers within 5 miles to evacuate. Tens of thousands fled. Businesses and schools closed. On the fourth day, President Jimmy Carter visited the plant to reassure a terrified nation the situation was under control. According to the Energy Department's website, the incident caused no deaths or direct health effects. Health studies have offered differing conclusions on whether residents experienced elevated illness rates. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission said investigations have found that the release of radiation, quote, had negligible effects on the physical health of individuals or the environment. The accident, which spawned congressional hearings, litigation, and a criminal probe, galvanized opponents of nuclear power. Plans for new reactors were soon scrapped. The island's other undamaged reactor restarted in 1985, but ultimately succumbed to market forces. It closed in 2019, unable to compete with low-cost natural gas. About 700 jobs were eliminated. But a new era of voracious energy demand has arrived. Public sentiment has also shifted. Recent polling shows support for nuclear energy nears record highs. A Wall Street Journal poll last year found that first-time voters strongly favor the power source to curb carbon emissions. In central Pennsylvania, an intergenerational schism shadows the restart, said Eric Epstein, 66, of Harrisburg, who joined 3 Mile Island Alert, a watchdog group, in '84. Some people look at it as an economic boom, he said side of the reboot. Other people look at it as an albatross around their neck. Constellation said the undamaged reactor at 3 Mile Island went on to become one of the world's safest and best-run nuclear plants. The restart will bring 3,400 jobs to Pennsylvania, including 600 at the plant, plus an estimated $800 million in state tax revenue, which will help fund schools and government services. We appreciate that some people are still haunted by memories of the past, the company said, but the U.S. nuclear industry evolved and improved. And I think that's a good point, that the other reactor went on to continue operating for another 45 years. Not a problem. People also forget, because everyone will bring up, well, what about Chernobyl? I'll tell you about Chernobyl. Not a problem. Let's talk more. The other 3 reactors at the Chernobyl site, just by the way, continue to operate until, I want to say, 2017. They finally shut down the other 3 reactors, sort of thing, which I think was part of them putting the new cover over the reactor 1 that had exploded. And also, by the way, that type of explosion would have been contained in the US because we have containment buildings. The Soviet Union didn't build them because it was too expensive. We also don't build RBMK reactors. That's the other thing. And again, their other reactor was running 7 years ago, 6 years ago. What's to complain about? But again, it's something where you're going to start. My point in bringing all of this up is as follows. There is a huge generational divide between what younger people are willing to do to get a job, get ahead, make something happen, and the boomers kind of holding back on on everything and trying to stop everything and trying to keep progress from happening. And I think the boomer concerns aren't necessarily wrong or misplaced. I think a lot of them make a lot of sense at a certain level. Um But I also feel I would also tell the boomers, I said, you know what? That plant you're living next to, 6 years ago it was operating. If you've been living here for the last couple decades, you've been living with it from 1985 until now. You're still here, not glowing at night, radiation free, everything's operating as normal. We're reviving a reactor that was online 6 years ago. You know, so but this is the type of generational divide of older people who want to keep things as they are because it benefits them, and younger people who want something to change because they're looking for a job, they're looking for their come up, they're looking for their good job, they're looking for a salary that's going to get themselves ahead. This is going to keep happening over and over and over again, and the reason here is quite obvious, and I'll show it to you right now. This is a small town in Kentucky, 4,800 people. This is the line for the local church food bank. This was posted anonymously on Reddit. It says here 10% of the population of the town is waiting at the food bank. The line is up there. It's all the way back here. And this is why people are desperate. This is why people are desperate for a come up. This is why people are looking for anything to get something moving, get something ahead, because it's 34 degrees and there are people who are standing outside a local church food bank when they really should be having a cheeky shop at the grocery store and heading home. Instead, they're waiting in line for free food because this is how they're going to be able to eat this week. And now you know why I call this the Long Depression. And why I've argued we never really recovered from 2008. And what's even kind of sad is things get worse. There's been a couple reports bumping around. I don't have any stories this evening to cover it. We might talk about the newsletter on Saturday. But there's some reports going around that right now we have more layoffs than we've had since 2008, and unemployment may reach Great Depression levels. And we have Herbert Hoover in office. Sort of thing. In the form of Trump. This is what we're out here doing. This is what is is happening, and this is why people are willing to reopen the nuclear plant and get the good jobs, because this is the desperation that we are getting to. And it's all ages, all types, all this sort of thing, but all have one thing in common. They're trying to get some food for the week, have something to eat. It doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. Speaking of money-grubbing people, nuclear power, and AI, we have another story here. OpenAI is accused of using legal tactics to silence nonprofits. 7 nonprofit groups that have criticized OpenAI say it sent them wide-ranging subpoenas as part of its litigation against Elon Musk. It says here, OpenAI says it was founded with the goal of benefiting humanity, but several nonprofit organizations say that the artificial intelligence behemoth has strayed from its mission, alleged that it has recently used intimidation tactics to silence them. At least 7 nonprofits that have been critical of OpenAI have received subpoenas in recent months, which they say are overly broad and appear to be a form of legal intimidation. All of the subpoenas are part of a legal battle between OpenAI and tech titan Elon Musk, with OpenAI suggesting that the subpoenaed nonprofits are somehow connected to Musk. The organizations that received subpoenas had signed or organized open letters and petitions critical of OpenAI's ongoing efforts to restructure from a nonprofit to a for-profit public benefit corporation. In one case, a subpoenaed nonprofit had also sponsored a California bill that imposed the first wide-ranging regulations on leading AI companies like OpenAI. 6 of the nonprofits were not involved in the lawsuit between OpenAI and Musk before the tech company brought them into it. By issuing the subpoenas, the remaining nonprofit had filed a supporting brief in the case, but says it had not engaged with Musk. 3 of the subpoenas issued to San Francisco Foundation, Echo, Future of Life Institute have not been previously reported. The nonprofits say the subpoenas seem designed to extract private information about OpenAI's critics, despite most of the organizations having no relation to Musk or the ongoing lawsuit. Robert Weissman, co-president of Public Citizen, a nonprofit consumer advocacy organization that has been critical of OpenAI's restructuring plans but is uninvolved in the current lawsuit and has not received a subpoena, told NBC News that OpenAI's intent in issuing the subpoenas is clear. Quote, "This behavior is highly unusual. It's 100% intended to intimidate," he said. Quote, "This is the kind of tactic you would expect from the most cutthroat for-profit corporation," Weissman said. "It's an attempt to bully nonprofit critics, to chill speech and deter them from speaking out." The subpoenas, four of which were reviewed by NBC News, ask for a wide variety of documents and materials, including all information about the organization's funders and donations, in addition to all communication regarding Musk, Meta, and its founder Mark Zuckerberg. OpenAI had previously expressed suspicions about Meta and Zuckerberg's involvement in Musk's $97 billion bid to buy OpenAI in February. The subpoenas also ask for, quote, all documents and communications concerning the governance or organizational structure of OpenAI. OpenAI said in September that its conversion to a more traditional for-profit company would, quote, enable us to raise the capital required to accomplish our mission, unquote. The change is seen as a key step before the company could be publicly listed and would allow investors to hold valuable equity in the for-profit instead of just receiving a slice of profits. Critics of the conversation argue that a change could allow OpenAI, now the world's highest valued startup, to pursue profit over its charitable mission. Well, obviously. They are in pole position. Um, it gets into all the details, which we're not going to read into here. It puts OpenAI in pole position to do an IPO. That's what they want to do, and they obviously think that Musk, who's been critical of that, has been trying to use other nonprofits to criticize OpenAI, and they're at least trying to find out if there's anything to that. And it being read as bullying is a fair reading. It does say here that. The controversy around the subpoenas exploded online Friday as employees of several of the nonprofits alleged on social media that the AI Titan subpoenas are hardball legal tactics that far surpass normal legal action and are irrelevant to the ongoing Musk lawsuit. The allegations, which included photos of several subpoenas, led to several prominent current and former employees of OpenAI publicly criticizing its actions, highly unusual for the tight-lipped company. This doesn't seem great, OpenAI's Joshua Akyam, the company's head of mission alignment, said in an X post Friday afternoon. Akyam did not respond to NBC News' request for comment. Akyam reports to CEO Sam Altman and is tasked with ensuring OpenAI's pursuit of smarter-than-human AI systems benefit all of humanity. Quote, we have a duty to and a mission for all of humanity, Akyam wrote Friday. There are things that can go wrong with power, and sometimes people on the inside have to be willing to point it out loudly. The subpoenas and tactics at issue in Friday's statement stem from a protracted and heated legal battle involving Musk. Musk sued Altman, OpenAI, and several co-founders last year, accusing them of breaching OpenAI's contractual duties by embracing a for-profit drive nested within its nonprofit structure in what Musk alleged has been, quote, a textbook tale of altruism versus greed, unquote. Altman and OpenAI contend that Musk was one of OpenAI's early boosters, provided around $45 million to the company in its early years, is now jealous of the company's success, and is employing, quote, bad faith tactics to slow down OpenAI and seize control of the leading AI innovations for his personal benefit. Musk is also the founder and CEO of OpenAI rival xAI, which is quickly trying to catch up to other AI companies' capabilities. In response to a request for comment, an OpenAI spokesperson referred to NBC News to posts on X from OpenAI's Chief of Strategy Officer, Jason Kwan. And we will not get into all of that. But yes, so it's going down on the OpenAI nonprofit profit. We're going to do an IPO because we want trillions of dollars fight. And yeah, I think Sam Altman is right about Musk. Musk is trying to keep OpenAI busy with a lawsuit in the hopes that his AI service can catch up, and that, I think Musk starting his own thing rather than just enjoying being part of Sam's thing doesn't really make any sense, other than Musk wants his ego involved and he wants, AI powered spaceships that go to Mars and land themselves, and you'll drive to the launch pad in your AI powered Tesla sort of thing. And and I think he doesn't want to just own some of it. I think he wants to own it all. And I think this is Musk's way of competing by keeping Sam and company busy. And narratively speaking, because I am the news narrative guy, narratively speaking, this then creates a whole new PR problem for OpenAI. What should have been a quiet conversion sort of thing is now becoming a public thing. And you know how I know? Because we're talking about it. So when it comes to business competition, all this type of thing, narrative, publicity, PR, what people know, what people are saying, all this type of thing is important. And the reality is, this is a really great way to cause a giant distraction that keeps OpenAI busy with many other things and give Musk's xAI some runway to catch up. And I don't think this lawsuit's going to go forward, but I don't think its job is to go forward. I think its job, and what OpenAI's lawyers are doing, I think what its job to do is to distract OpenAI and become a bit of a money suck, because lawyers who deal with this don't come cheap. So Let's move on. Oh, it's good. We're only at 7:30. We might get to I actually get to all the news tonight. Um, so so a while ago, several months ago, I had mentioned that down there at the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Service, ICE, um, which is part of Homeland Security, they just hire an any old body. And this story came from the UK. It's Daily Mail. We call it the fail among my UK friends. It's the fail, but this news story: Kristi Noem's ICE hiring Chaos Laid Bear as fat, illiterate, and violent misfits, quote, not ready to tie their own laces, are recruited. It says here the Trump administration's frantic push to hire 10,000 new deportation officers by year's end has spiraled into what insiders describe as a national embarrassment, with lax vetting and a signing bonus of up to $50,000 luring a wave of woefully unfit recruits. An exhaustive Daily Mail investigation has exposed how immigration and customs enforcement has lowered standards so dramatically that the new cohort now includes recent high school graduates and applicants who can, and I'm quoting now, barely read or write, unquote, as well as those who lack basic physical fitness and even have pending criminal charges. Most of the new hires in the $30 billion initiative are retired law enforcement who are receiving virtual training and being repurposed for desk duty. Meanwhile, total novices are being fast-tracked into Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Georgia, where instructors have been left astounded at the levels of incompetence. Quote, we have people failing open book tests, and we have folks that can barely read or write English, one Department of Homeland Security official told the Daily Mail. We even had a 469-pound man sent to the academy whose own doctor certified him not at all fit for any physical activity. Insiders say the vetting process has been so rushed that officials didn't even wait for drug test results to come back before hiring recruits and flying them off to Georgia, only to discover afterward that the test came back positive. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem told President Trump on Tuesday the department will hire its 10,000th ICE officer within 10 days. A department spokesperson said the hiring surge is advancing while maintaining its high fitness and training standards. They added ICE has received more than 200,000 applications from patriotic Americans who want to join ICE law enforcement to help us remove murderers, rapists, gang members, pedophiles, and terrorists from our country. The vast majority of new officers, more than 85%, brought on during the hiring surge are experienced law enforcement officers who have already successfully completed a law enforcement academy. But staff at the Georgia Academy tell a different story. In one shocking incident, they were left shaking their heads when one student asked to be excused from class so he could attend a court date on a gun charge. I'm sorry. That's funny. Other recruits were even discovered to have tattoos associated with gangs and white supremacists when they stripped off their shirts during workouts. Reports from FLETC include incidents of violence, disruptive behavior, and allegations of sexual misconduct on campus, most handled internally. One recruit, 29-year-old Darren Coleman, was arrested by county police for allegedly exploding at an FLETC bus driver and smashing his phone, according to records obtained by the Daily Mail. He was described as a known problem on campus who had just resigned when he demanded a ride from the driver. Sources say another male recruit, after hitting the bars, was caught barging into a female dorm and hitting on the occupants. Another groped a woman in class. It wasn't like, oops, I touched your boob, one source said. Nope, he went full on to predator mode while he was doing the defensive tactics training. Since the recruitment campaign began in July, 584 recruits have failed out of the academy as of December 1st, according to records obtained by the Daily Mail. Over the same period, figures show that 558 had graduated and another 620 were still in training. So yes, and here's some of the this is the guy that hit that bus driver. I was gonna say, like, here's some of the miscreants now. But yes, of course, there's pictures and photos, um, and he said apparently it also feels like it's rushed. Some instructors privately griped to HQ staff while recruits have vented to their families about what they were experiencing. One young recruit, a college grad who's seeking to follow in his father's footsteps by becoming a deportation officer, likened it to a circus. Quote, my son called me and told me in the middle of class, officers came in and removed two of his classmates for, quote, stolen valor, unquote, the father told the Daily Mail, referring to individuals who falsely claimed to have military experience. He said his son also complained about the training seeming rushed. Quote, there's a lot of frustration, he said. You've got kids there that don't have the aptitude to pass basic tests and are flunking. And on the other side, you have students failing PT because they couldn't run or do sit-ups. The academy recently eliminated the sit-up requirement because so many students couldn't handle them and subbed in a sprint challenge. The former instructor said his greatest concern is that the modifications to training will produce less experienced officers. Stephen Miller and Corey Lewandowski want what they want, and they're going to do whatever they have to get people through, the father said, referring respectively to DHS advisor and NOM's de facto chief of staff. But once you've prostituted your hiring standard, you prostituted everything, he added. Everyone from ICE sees what's coming into the field, and they're absolutely petrified. The DHS official sounded a similar alarm. We do have some new recruits that are fantastic, but we're not bringing people in who shouldn't be hired at all into any federal government job, definitely not one that has a badge and a gun. You have kids who graduated from high school in June and are at the basic academy now, the source added. Even with these older folks that we're hiring, they're not people who need to be out in the street with a badge and a gun anymore. This isn't the Department of Baking Cookies, the source said. This is the Department of Homeland Security, where you can be deported from the country. And now we're employing people who are not equipped to tie their own shoelaces. This whole thing is a complete disaster, beginning to end. And so I read this and I saved this away because I wanted to talk about it because this is an extensive investigation. But, you know, these things get written. How true is it? What's really going on? And it's the fail. However, we are so blessed here at the Cameron Journal Newshour. I got an email this morning from Marty France. Now, if you're not a longtime listener to this show and don't know who Marty France is a former Air Force colonel, general, sort of thing. High-end military. High-end military. Very competent. And Marty France, former Air Force guy, decided to apply to be a deportation officer. He says here, I applied to ICE last summer on a whim just to see if they'd take a 60-plus-year-old. I completed the full application on USA Jobs website. I received a job offer a few days later, undoubtedly after a background check had confirmed my Arizona football legacy, contingent upon me being able to pass a physical exam and a physical fitness test. If they had done a real background check, they would know that he's former military officer, sort of thing. And it says, and so he has the letter here. Right here, it says, please click on this link, position title, direct hire authority, duty in Denver, Colorado, sort of thing, tentative, and the pre-employment physical fitness test self-assessment. It says you will not be considered for the next phase of the selection process until you have notified ICE that you've achieved the level of fitness listed below. Please complete the chart below and sign the self-assessment. For deportation officer applicants, a self-assessment must be submitted along with your physician exam and clearance assessment form. For criminal investigator applicants, self-assessment must be submitted to your PFT administrator prior to your taking the PFTP. And they are as follows. Sit-ups, 32 within 1 minute. I'm fat and haven't been into a gym in almost a decade. I could do that. 22-yard sprint, max 47.73 seconds. I'm out there. Push-ups, minimum 22 within 1 minute. I could probably take that on. And 1.5-mile run, max 14 minutes and 25 seconds. You can achieve that with a brisk walk. In fact, I have a funny story from college about that I'm not going to tell right now, but that's a real thing they sent out to a real applicant, sort of thing. It says here, if you know me, you probably realize that even at 66.5, with a revised steel hip on the right side, this is a pretty low bar. 22 push-ups and 22 sit-ups? Ooh, scary. At a rippling 162 pounds, I'm probably 30% or more under the median ICE agent weight, though. They need to special order my uniform. Watching some of the Keystone Cop-style ICE arrests we've seen on the internet tells me that even these standards can be waived if you can fog a mirror, eat a dozen donuts at one sitting, wear a mask comfortably even if it caused you untold agony to do so during COVID, and of course at least feign intent to tackle a brown person. I almost immediately sent a declination letter to DHS, included some colorful comments on my assessment of their mission execution. A few weeks later, I applied again, just to a little bit of my side to waste more of their time. Hashtag good trouble. Now it appears they're on to me and will no longer consider me for any future applications. My story must have gotten out, but how it reached Gary Trudeau, I'll never know. My wife, Becky, an avid daily Washington Post reader, found today's Doonesbury rather amusing. Coincidence? You be the judge. Because as a cartoon, that was a very similar situation to him. But yeah, I mean, so it's something kind of like, okay, it was an interesting just kind of coincidence that all of this came together in exactly this way. But this is, I had heard rumors about this sort of thing, and I had heard that this was a problem, and it appears it is definitely real. So that's on the immigration front. You will be somewhat tackled if they can catch you by a barely literate ICE agent somewhere near you soon, if you're brown. I'll have to keep an eye out for wandering ICE agents. Although even I, a chubby asthmatic, may be able to outrun them. Um, uh, News breaking out today: Trump has unveiled his $12 billion farm aid package due to falling exports due to Trump's tariff wars, and the closing of USAID, where farmers sold a lot of food to be shipped overseas. And in his press conference, he said that it was revenue from tariffs and revenue from abroad. I would remind people that tariffs again are not paid by other countries; they're paid by us, the customer, because the companies pay the government for those things when they are imported. Um, and so this was kind of the original story. I wonder if there's an update. Oh, doesn't look like it. In the press conference, Trump mentioned that it was going to be taken from tariff revenue, but there would be a $12 billion farm aid package. Now, again, this is the second bailout for farmers Trump has done because of his trade wars. The first one was when he got in an issue with China in his first term over soybeans, and China stopped buying American soybeans. That also cost $16 billion back then, so we're down $4 billion. But there'll be a $12 billion farm aid package for farmers for unsold crops, falling crop prices, missing profits, all this sort of thing. So, yeah, it's a thing. Keeps happening. I do love the roasting in the comments. Is this socialism self-inflicted? A socialist bailout again? Why can't they pull themselves up from their bootstraps? Like, um, so, and this one, farmers don't want a handout, they want their markets back. Stupid tariff wars need to stop. Yeah. This is, I mean, it's not entirely tariffs, it's a lot of factors together. But it is rather entertaining that Trump starts a whole trade war, China stops buying things, opens up new markets, all this type of thing. American farmers are left holding the bag, and then now we're paying for the privilege. So that's a news story you'll see floating around, and I imagine it will become a bit of a joke. Yet another farmer bailout from Trump, as we already see in the comments section here. Um, the other kind of set of stories is big changes in legislation. So well, that gets into the cabinet meeting and the cafe car standards and K cars, and we'll start with the Inflation Reduction Act. So, the Inflation Reduction Act 2022 to 2025. It was far too easy for Republicans to kill the Inflation Reduction Act. Where did those who crafted it go wrong? In late 2024, an operative for the right-wing gotcha group Project Veritas clandestinely filmed his Tinder date with a 29-year-old EPA employee. The employee, who talked freely about his work distributing grant funds allocated by the Inflation Reduction Act, at one point compared that process to throwing gold bars off the edge of the Titanic, dispatching grants quickly before the proverbial iceberg, Donald Trump, took office and clawed back the funding. A few months later, Lee Zeldin, the new head of the EPA, announced a remarkable discovery. My awesome team at EPA has found the gold bars. Shockingly, $20 billion of your tax dollars were parked in an outside financial institution by the Biden EPA. There were no actual gold bars, of course, and Zeldin probably didn't need a team to find them. Those $20 billion are part of the $27 billion Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, or GGRF, a program that was meant to help low-income communities finance and develop renewable energy projects with IRA-funded grants to nonprofits. The EPA had used Citibank to transfer the funds. Nearly $7 billion went to a single far-left activist group, in Zeldin's description called Climate United. Among those supposedly radical plots the nonprofit planned to finance with that money was pre-construction on a University of Arkansas solar project projected to save the state $120 million in energy costs, in a red state no less. Alleging fraud, the EPA and FBI demanded that Citibank freeze those funds and referred the case to the Justice Department. While such requests are normally granted only with a court order, Citibank complied. Just days after Zeldin's initial announcement, FBI agents started showing up at the homes of Climate United employees, who faced tongue lashings by right-wing news outlets and subpoenas from Republican-controlled congressional committees that had initiated their own investigations. The DOJ's investigation found no evidence of criminal wrongdoing, however, and GGRF grantees remain locked in a legal battle with the EPA that may eventually end up in front of the Supreme Court. This spring, the EPA informed Climate United that it had terminated its grant not because of fraud, but rather because of a change in administrative priorities. We briefly joked about renaming our organization Gold Bars LLC, said Phil Arnaud, Climate United's Chief Strategy and Partnerships Officer. The ordeal was a sign of things to come. Since Trump took power, his administration has waged a multi-front war on its ever-growing list of political enemies. In July, Republicans' One Big Beautiful Bill Act, or OBBB, repealed much of the Inflation Reduction Act's nearly $400 billion worth of climate and energy-related grants, tax incentives, and loan guarantees. While the OBBB stopped short of a full repeal of the IRA, it took a sledgehammer to the parts projected to drive down the most emissions. Subsidies for residential customers on leased solar and wind ended immediately. Consumer-side incentives for purchasing electric vehicles and residential energy efficiency upgrades expired in October. Generous tax credits for wind, solar, and hydrogen projects, as well as wind manufacturing, will be phased out years ahead of schedule. The Trump administration's war on the Inflation Reduction Act and all things climate embodies the horrors of Republican rule, a paranoid lawless crusade waged by extremely online ideologues who are using their control over every branch of government to stoke culture wars, settle scores, and please their deep-pocketed donors. Quote, I don't feel scared about being targeted, unquote, Arnaud told me, but I'm scared for our country. I know what they can do if they want to target their political opponents. They can steal our money from our bank accounts. They can try to get us fired. They can drag us in front of congressional committees. They can open up sham DOJ investigations. They can drag our names through the PR machine and Fox News. The Inflation Reduction Act was a perfect scapegoat because of how it encapsulated democratic governance, a Frankensteinish vehicle for progressive economic ideas, emissions reduction, justice, geopolitics, and the idiosyncratic donor-informed beliefs of lawmakers who enjoy outsized power thanks to the party's razor-thin congressional majority. Initially envisioned as a decadal project of national renewal that could build enthusiasm for the party and its ideas across partisan lines, the IRA, a much narrower law than its architects had hoped, was instead gutted without much fanfare less than 3 years after it passed. Many people I spoke to for this piece who played significant roles in the bill's creation thought it might prove more durable, not least because many of the provisions stood to benefit red states. While the IRA wasn't designed to funnel more money into Republican districts, nearly 3/4 of the investment spurred by the bill flowed to states that swung for Trump in 2024. As of May, $642 billion of the private sector clean energy investments announced since the IRA passed were in Republican-controlled congressional districts, compared to $187 billion of announced investments in Democrat-controlled districts. Reasonably enough, one White House deputy reported having been, quote, very hopeful that because these clean energy investments were going to red places, that would create some bipartisan buy-in, unquote. A few Republicans resisted repealing it. However, just 18 Republican House members sent a gently worded letter to House Speaker Mike Johnson asking him to preserve some portions of the bill even as they supported axing others. Every signatory who was in Congress when the OBBB came up for a vote backed it. On one hand, the reasons this happened are simple. The GOP is dead set against anything it considers to be climate policy, but as Democrats grope around for a viable strategy to win back power, it's worth taking a closer look at why one of the Biden era's signature legislative achievements could be cut down so quickly and unceremoniously. Only 35%, and this gets into the problem with the Biden years. Listen carefully, everyone. Only 35% of voters surveyed by the Yale Program on Climate Change Communication last spring reported having heard, quote, a lot or some about the Inflation Reduction Act. Even more remarkably, less than half of self-identified pro-climate voters either hadn't heard of the IRA or had only heard a little about it. For all the many successes of the IRA, $100 billion in grants, 330,000 jobs, and $400 billion in private investment in nearly every state, the law and its supporters failed to make the case for its continued existence. How did the IRA happen? What did its architects hope it would accomplish? And what could a more successful governance agenda look like for a country plagued by climate change, inequality, and authoritarianism? Where, in other words, did we go wrong? And how do we find our way back? And that gets into various and sundry details that go all the way back to 2008. And I'm not going to focus on them right now because I want to jump over to the outcome of some of this, which is Trump has reduced the emission and CAFE standards for cars. And the headline is a bit vapid. Trump returns to gasoline as fuel of choice for cars, getting Biden's climate policy. The president said he would weaken Biden-era mileage standards, which were designed to increase electric vehicle sales, calling them, quote, a scam. President Trump on Wednesday threw the weight of the federal government behind vehicles that burn gasoline rather than electric cars, cutting one of the country's most significant efforts to address climate change and thrusting the automobile industry into greater uncertainty. Flanked by executives from major automakers in the Oval Office, Mr. Trump said the Transportation Department would significantly weaken fuel efficiency requirements for tens of millions of new cars and light trucks. The administration claimed the changes would save Americans $109 billion over 5 years and shave $1,000 off the average cost of a new car. The Biden administration's stricter efficiency standards were designed to get more Americans to go electric, but Mr. Trump said they forced automakers to build cars using expensive technologies that drove up costs, drove up prices, and made the car much worse. This is a green new scam, and people were paying too much for a car that didn't work as well. For the past half century, the efficiency standards have compelled automakers to increase the distance their vehicles can travel on a gallon of gas, reducing fuel consumption and leading to innovations like electric and hybrid cars. The announcement on Wednesday was the second part of a 1-2 punch against policies promoting electric cars, a central pillar of President Joseph R. Biden Jr.'s strategy for fighting climate change. Transportation is the largest source of greenhouse gases in the United States, and Mr. Biden had adopted a carrot and stick approach to reducing these emissions. He offered tax credits to encourage motorists to buy electric cars, while requiring that automakers meet stringent fuel efficiency standards to pressure them to sell more non-polluting models. Mr. Trump and the Republican controlled Congress got rid of the tax credits earlier this year. They also eliminated fines for automakers who violate the fuel efficiency standards, and now the standards themselves will be watered down. While auto executives publicly praised the announcement, they have privately fretted they're being buffeted by conflicting federal policies. During the Biden administration, they invested billions of dollars and reoriented their manufacturing to produce electric vehicles and batteries. Now the Trump administration's tariffs on steel and imported car parts have lopped billions of dollars from automakers' bottom lines while disrupting supply chains. Inflation has also made it difficult for many people to afford new cars. The plan announced on Wednesday would require automakers to achieve an average of 34.5 miles per gallon for cars and light trucks in the model year 2031, down from the standard 50.4 miles per gallon set by the Biden administration. The Biden administration rule, finalized in June 2024, assumed that manufacturers would comply by increasing their sales of electric vehicles, which use no gasoline and would help boost the average fuel efficiency across their product lines. Biden administration officials estimate that the rule would lower fuel costs by $23 billion while preventing more than 710 million metric tons of carbon dioxide from entering the atmosphere by 2050, the equivalent of taking 165 million cars off the road for 1 year. Mr. Trump, who refers to climate change as a hoax, initially promised to repeal the rules and end what he falsely called an EV mandate. But on Wednesday, Mr. Trump said he was motivated to weaken the rules in order to lower prices of new cars. The cost of living has emerged as a major concern for voters and a political vulnerability for the president and his party. Quote, perhaps grudgingly, the president is increasingly realizing that inflation, affordability, and the economy are real concerns across the partisan spectrum, unquote, said Barry Rabe, a professor emeritus at the University of Michigan. Left unsaid on Wednesday was the fact that analysts expect the president's tariffs on cars and car parts to increase the price of automobiles built abroad. The average price of a new car in the United States has now exceeded $50,000 for the first time, according to Kelley Blue Book, an automotive research company. It attributed the increase to tariffs as well as low loan rates and new electric vehicle sales. Mr. Trump has aggressively repealed dozens of federal climate protections. The rollback of automobile standards comes as the administration is also lifting restrictions on greenhouse gas emissions from power plants and oil and gas wells, while making it easier for fossil fuel companies to extract and burn more coal, oil, and gas, the main drivers of climate change. So, this is where we are. Mary Barra, the chief executive of General Motors, said on Wednesday her company would continue to seek significant improvement from a fuel economy perspective. Regardless of the federal rules, she said people should buy electric cars based on their merits, not because of government incentives. People choose an EV because it's a better performance vehicle and it fits their life, Ms. Barra said at the New York Times Deal Book Summit before the White House announcement. At the White House event, Jim Farley, the chief executive of Ford Motor, pointed out that his company was second in EV sales. We can make real progress on carbon emissions and energy efficiency while still giving customers choice and affordability. He said. Antonio Filosa, the chief executive of Stellantis, said the move would realign mileage standards with real-world market conditions. Well, Stellantis, be happy you can sell a car. Don't care about the standards. Be happy anyone is buying the terrible cars that you're building right now. Like, that's all. For more on shitty Dodge products, tune into the Living Joke on Wednesday. Like, but I thought this was an interesting. A lot of times, narratively speaking, and all this type of thing, a lot of people don't understand what the differences are between the parties. They don't understand how policies change and how these changes can affect your real life. And the reason why I want to talk about this is an example of exactly that happening, and where, things just don't go on. Who you vote for really matters. And this gets into into that. And it also gets into, most importantly, all the ways in which Democrats fail over and over again to have a real conversation about their policies, a real conversation about what they're doing, announcing what's happening. And it happens. The Obamas were bad about it. Bill Clinton was not. The Obamas were bad about it. Biden was bad about it. People just don't know that a lot of this stuff is going on. But guess what? When people know, it gives them something to vote for. It gives them something to hang on to. And quite frankly, for those of us in the commentariat, it makes our job easier because we can talk about good things about you rather than just going on complaining about all the things you don't do and all the things that you do not talk about. So that's why I want to talk about that, and also talking about the changes in car standards. These stories didn't necessarily have it, but there is a rumor that because of changing standards, small trucks, the K trucks from Japan that are very small, will start to be legal in the US. That's a rumor right now. That's kind of what's being talked about, that the lowering standards will allow those to be practical here. We'll wait and reserve judgment on that. But that is also another part of Trump changing the safety requirement. And it's mostly the safety requirements. The safety requirements and emission standards will supposedly allow small trucks to be sold here. It might allow the Toyota Hilux to finally come to America, and a bunch of other vehicles made by manufacturers that are not sold in our markets, because we have, quite frankly, the highest vehicle safety standards in the world. And we have usually the highest emission standards, except for maybe some of the EU standards. And so this is the situation. But there's a lot of great and interesting cars that I think people would love and like that are not available in this market, and this may change that. And so people are excited about that. Um, so yeah. Anyway, it's 8:03. We're basically at the hour. And I'm not going to get into Trump's disastrous cabinet meeting, and we can save Tim Waltz and the Somalis for the newsletter because I already wrote about it on Saturday. So, if you want to find out how Tim Waltz has managed to lose $6.5 billion to Somali organizations, including some stuff that went to the Al-Shabaab terrorist organization, CameronJournal.substack.com, or head over to CameronJournal.com and click on This Week on the Cameron Journal, and you will find the newsletter from the weekend where I write all about that. So I'll send you there for that. My name is Cameron Cowan. Thank you for listening or watching the Cameron Journal News Hour. I really appreciate it. Please find me online everywhere you can think of at Cameron Cowan on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, at Cameron Journal on TikTok, Facebook.com/Cameron L. Cowan. Just search my name, you'll find me. I'm the one with this face. And I look forward to seeing you next week for the Cameron Journal News Hour. I look forward to seeing you Wednesday for the Living Joke. And this week's interview, where is today's date? Today's the 8th. We have an interview yesterday from debut mystery author John David. Tomorrow we have an interview with Stan Lai, who's the most famous playwright in all of China. So you need to definitely watch that. And we also, on Friday, had an interview with Canadian author Cinda Galt about a historical fiction set in Western Canada, which may soon become part of the United States. We'll talk about that next week. My name is Cameron Cowan. This is the Cameron Journal News Hour. Have a wonderful evening. Good night.